Hello and welcome to Oak Road Hatter. It's me, Finley Cannon, once again. And this week, in the absence of Jamie and Adam, I'm joined for his first appearance of this season by Lewis Jones. How are you doing, Lewis?
Yes, not too bad, thank you, mate. Third reserve, as you could say.
Well, we've been trying to get you on this season, but you've just been too busy. So whether that's following Luton or just with your other plans, but we finally got you on, and it's good timing because I know for a fact you've got plenty to say about Luton's defeat at the weekend to Cardiff, and we'll get into that very shortly. But before that, don't forget to check out oakroadhatter.com for all the latest content from us and the team. And also check us out on social media at Oak Road Hatter on all your social media platforms. But yeah, let's get straight into it. And it was a 1-0 defeat at home to Cardiff City, which, if you look at it on paper from the outside, maybe that wouldn't seem so bad. But then you realise that we were promoted with Cardiff and were in the Premier League 2 years ago, which is quite easy to forget watching us recently. And then you look at what we saw on the pitch, and it was much worse than the scoreline suggests.
Yeah, it's probably good we didn't do this straight after the game because I was absolutely raging. So I've had a few days, watched the highlights a couple of times. I'll come away from it less angry than what I was, but as we're going to touch on, I'm sure it wasn't the greatest of performances by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, it was, I think, limited in terms of the team being connected and the quality on display, particularly when you compare it to what Cardiff were doing, which I think we will talk about in a bit more detail shortly because they had some very impressive performances whilst we had a few players struggle. Obviously, they scored in the second half, and we actually didn't start terribly in the first half. We got a few shots away. We were sort of trying to get into their box, and we were having a few attacks, but nothing seemed to be paying off. And throughout the game, all of our chances seemed to be falling to Makosa in the box. I don't think he had 4 or 5 chances on goal, which, yeah, for if you've got your shots are falling to the centre back in your side, it's really not what you want.
No, it's unfortunate. I remember the one at Peterborough as well in the first half, and it looked easier to score than miss, and he blazes it straight over the bar. I think it was just one of them days where we could have been there for 180 minutes and had as many chances as we did in that game and still not scored. As you say, the first half was probably more even of the two, but there were a lot of good chances in that first half. You look at Wells, had 2 good chances. One where Nordas put the ball into the box, back post. The one where he's through and goal and puts it wide. I think another one was on the half volley as well. There's 3 good chances there. Trott makes an excellent save from Nordas's, I don't really know what to call it, flick, touch, bounce off. So it's one of them ones, any other day of the week, you could be going in 1-0 up, but it wasn't meant to be.
Yeah, you mentioned both Nordas and Wells there. We did see a couple of changes in the side with those two starting up front together for the first time. And I think when you looked at it sort of before the game started, that was quite a promising idea for those two to be playing together, with Wells able to sort of play off Nordas. But whilst I thought Nordas did well at times, sort of putting pressure on the Cardiff defence and sort of backing into them and trying to hold the ball up, I just think he really lacked that quality in front of goal, which is something we've seen already this season. And Wells, you could tell, wasn't fully fit. He was still returning from his knock or whatever, and it was quite easy for the defence to keep hold of them. You mentioned the chances we had. We actually had significantly more chances than them. We had 6 more shots in the game than Cardiff did, and I guess as the home side, you sort of expect that. But in terms of the quality we were giving Trott to save, I don't think there was much that was massively testing, bar the couple of shots you mentioned there. And we could not get control of the ball whatsoever in midfield. It was a really, really poor day for Walsh, who, yeah, I just think, besides the 2 games where he got sent off, I just think it was maybe his worst performance in a Luton shirt. And you could see as soon as he sort of made a couple of mistakes on the ball, his head had sort of gone, and he was really trying to make amends for that. And then he was just losing the ball more and more. And I felt sorry for him at times, but we kind of passengers in this side, and I was surprised that the change wasn't made at half time.
No, I completely agree. I was shocked to see him come out for that second half. I think I looked at it at half time. He made something ridiculous, like 7 out of 17 passes. As a central midfielder, that should be your bread and butter, making passes look easy, making them look simple. And maybe earlier on in his Luton career, some of these passes are more line breaking and more trying to get people through on goal. It wasn't even like that this game. It was simple sideways and backwards 5 yard passes. But everything he seemed to try just did not work out. And then when you look like someone with Baptiste on the bench, even Nelson, who for me really impressed against Coventry a couple of weeks ago, I was shocked to see him stay on the pitch for as long as he did, if I'm honest. You could even debate that it's probably worse than some of his red card performances because at least then he was on and off and he made one big mistake, but that was him. That was him done. It was a really, really poor performance from him. But there's quite a few about Naismith again. I thought was one of his worst performances in a Luton shirt since every appearance he's ever made. That one bit on the halfway line where he's trying to play out of trouble with two Cardiff men about 3 yards away from him. Obviously, Colwell scuffs it wide, which was surprising with how good he was on the day. But yeah, when you got someone like Baptiste on the bench, it was bizarre to see him stay on.
Yeah, you mentioned some of the poor performers there, and I think one name that has cropped up a couple of times now is Mark McGuinness, who obviously we bought from Cardiff, and I think Cardiff fans are probably looking at that in that game and laughing that they got as much money as they did for him with the performance he put on. He just seemed to really struggle to get control of the game and was not composed whatsoever, which was quite surprising when you look at how he ended last season almost. He was really stepping up at times and he just seems to have sort of lost that composure.
Yeah, I've got to put an early notice out there. I've never been a massive Mark McGuinness fan myself. I think he's one of them players who, if in a relegation scrap, you need bodies on the line, and you want someone to simply defend the box, he will probably do a job for you. If you want someone to play out from the back, bring the ball out, and organise the defence, he's not that sort of player. But I was saying to a few of the other Oak Road Hatter boys, I think he's made a mistake or been largely at fault in every game he's properly played in. Coventry, where he gets too tight to Hadji Wright, and there's a massive gap in between. That can be shared with Holmes. I'm happy to say that because Holmes then was all over the place with his 2 yards of pace. And then Bradford, obviously, again, you could debate he's at fault for 2 goals, but if not, definitely one. And then obviously today, well, Saturday now, but he just dives in. I'm not. You always get told as defender, stay on your feet, and he dives in for absolutely no reason at all because Saville's there, right next to Willock. He's there. He doesn't need to. He can stand his ground, and if he shoots, he probably blocks it if he stands up. So it's been really disappointing. Obviously, it sounds like it's a rough few weeks in pre-season because obviously missing 3 weeks with an illness means it must have been something fairly damning. But then that's also on Bloomfield to say, look, he is not ready. We have got centre-backs at the club. You can play Longvike there. You can play Naismith in the middle. You can put Makosso. You've got endless opportunities. So it's partly on McGuinness because look, he is a professional footballer getting paid a lot of money. He needs to step up. But equally, Bloomfield needs to take him out the firing line and say, look, you've not been at it. I'm dropping you.
And you mentioned the illness he had in pre-season there. Do you think he looks like he's visibly lost some weight? Because for me, I think he's looking quite skinny, particularly in his face, and you can see where that sort of illness has had more of an effect than you would expect on him. And it's unsurprising maybe that he's struggling to really impose himself on the game.
Yeah, it's an odd one. When I first saw him, I think it was a picture that the club put up when he first come back into the side. I think it was Coventry, and he looked shockingly slimmer. Again, I don't know exactly what the illness was. I don't know how it affected him, but you'd equally look at it and go, that shouldn't massively affect how good of a defender you are. Obviously, you might be not as strong, but if you get a bit slimmer, you get a bit leaner, then you become a bit more agile, a bit quicker. So I don't really know if it's an excuse. Maybe he's just not fully fit. But then we've had the same situation with Bramall, where he's not been fully fit, but he's looked okay. Far from a star player, but very steady. So it's a time will tell. I don't want to write him off this early in the season, but with Anderson, Mengi, a Doffin all to come back, you do have to start worrying for him.
And then you look at the price we paid for him, and it starts to become increasingly concerning. Also, that's also a given when you look at what we're not spending this summer. You think, oh, what were we really thinking spending that much money last summer? Because he's clearly not worth what we paid. And I think you look at the two players who played at the centre of defence for Cardiff, in Will Fish and Dylan Lawler, and I thought they were both very, very competent. I thought Fish in particular looked really quite impressive, especially when he got the ball and was very composed. And I just don't think that's something you can say for any of our back three.
No, it didn't look like it on the day. But that's the thing with McGuinness as well. He's an experienced player. I think he's only 24. He might be 25, but he's probably got over 200 appearances in English football now. So to say he's a youngish player who's not got loads of experience, you'd say fair enough. But he's an experienced head. He dominated League One by all accounts last time he played in the league. He was impressive at Cardiff, which obviously led to us buying him. And even at the back end of last year, he was good enough. So I'm not too sure what the issue is. Maybe he's not feeling as settled in his, because the back line, to be fair to him, is changing every single game, which certainly isn't helping. But yeah, he needs to massively step up the performances. The price tag is certainly not being close to justified at the moment.
And it was really not a home performance in terms of what we saw on the pitch. We've mentioned the lack of composure, but when you look at the possession from the game, Cardiff had 62% of the ball, and we only completed 191 passes all game, which was 71% pass accuracy. When you compare that to Cardiff, they completed 379 passes with 85% pass accuracy. And I think you can see just from that alone what the difference in terms of what we saw on the pitch. And we'll talk a bit more detail about their players now because they had a few that stood out for me. Nobody more than Ruben Colwell. He's only 23, but with his sort of physical stature, he's obviously very tall. He looks quite bulky for his age as well. He just seemed to glide around the pitch. He was drifting into space away from other midfielders and defenders and just driving past players. And I just didn't see anyone in a Luton shirt that was doing that.
I think Clark did it, to be fair to him, and I think Clark's been one of the most impressive players this season. Again, against Wigan midweek, he looked that level above. And at the moment, there's not too many players we can say that about on this Luton side. But yeah, Colwell, obviously, he was touted for big things years ago. He never quite lived up to it, but maybe this is his season because he just looked like a level above. He was just unreal. He was strong, two-footed, quick. Obviously, he missed that big chance, which I'm sure he'd be gutted about. But if we had a player like him, I'm sure he'd be starting every single week for us as well.
Yeah, you can see why Cardiff fans are such big fans of him in particular. And also, you saw his younger brother come on quite early on when David Turnbull went off injured, and I thought his brother Joel came on and was also very, very good in midfield. He was breaking up play and moving the ball quickly, which is, again, something we really lacked in the game. So with the pair of them and then Ryan Wintle as well, who's obviously the experienced of the three of them, they've got a really, really competent midfield. And I thought they moved the ball brilliantly and they controlled the game and sort of made it difficult for us to actually do anything when we were actually getting hold of the ball because they were immediately dropping into their shape and forcing us to try and make decisions. But the only thing we seemed to do all game was just get the ball in defence and punt it long for Nordas to try and sprint onto, and it was just being sort of wrestled off it by either Fish or Lawler and for the opening sort of 70 minutes or so, and then Callum Chambers came on, obviously. So I just don't really know what we were expecting him to be able to do when at times he was the only one up there, sort of pushing up to try and win that ball. And he did fairly well on the odd occasion, but there was very little we could expect him to do.
No, it was disappointing all round. It was odd because Wells had quite a few chances, but I thought it was by far his poorest game for us so far. A few of the other games you could say is probably our top three best players, but the chances fell to him and he couldn't tuck them away. And I don't think he had a great game. And then when your other striker's not playing too well, Nordas coming in for his first start in God knows how long. it's going to be tough up there. But I think that lends itself to the formation at times when you've got a centre half at right wing back. You basically have to play down Millie Ali's side, and it makes it considerably harder. I think the other disappointing thing for me was Bloomfield kept on touching on his pre-match interview that he expected them to play how they ended up playing. So why we didn't seem massively prepared for that, I don't know. Because we all thought they were going to play like that. They did play like that, and we seemed shocked. We seemed shell shocked by it, and it's just I don't know. It was disappointing all round. Obviously, there's this persistence for Bloomfield to say he feels like the five at the back complements our players the most. For me, it's not something I agree with. I think your two key players are your left wing back and your right wing back. Our only actual right wing back for me is Izzy Jones. Kajua was a winger, mainly is a winger, but can play a wing back. Walters is a centre half or right back who's being pushed further on. You look at the other side, you go Bramall. From what I could tell previously, he's mainly played left back, but from what fans have said, left wing back could suit him better. And then you got Ali, who's one of our best players. For me, he's just being massively nerfed playing at left wing back because he was so effective when he was high up against the Cardiff right back. So I can't see how he possibly thinks this is our strongest shape. Obviously, we've got an abundance of central defenders and strikers, which I can see why he's then going, we need to fit these players in. But he's had a transfer window to build this whole squad how he wants. I'm sure we could get rid of players if we wanted to. It can't be that difficult. Someone like Tom Holmes could easily go on loan to another League One club, I'm sure. I'm absolutely sure of it. Some of these strikers, Woodrow, again, I'm sure a League One club would take him. That might be a struggle with his probably high wages, but there's too many question marks for me and not enough answers.
Yeah, I've got to agree with the system there. Obviously, I've discussed it with Jamie and Adam on here how sort of the four versus the three at the back and what we'd like to see. And for me, I think the three at the back is just not working anymore. We've tried. How long have we persisted with it? We've just three centre backs desperately trying to find each other with passes that are just sort of bobbling along, and a midfield two are having to work harder than anyone else on the pitch because they've got this huge space to cover because they've got no one else in there with them, and then just absolutely no width apart from Ali, who's just having to bomb up and down and up and down, and he's having to track back so much that by the time he gets the ball to go forward, he's got half the pitch to travel through. So I think for me, the three at the back is done, but I don't think it's going to change anytime soon. And it's probably for that reason you've mentioned there with the sort of the abundance of centre backs that we've got, and also the abundance of strikers, which ironically, when you look at the problems we had in the Premier League and sort of last season as well, centre backs was not something we had an abundance of, and it was the one thing we kept struggling to fill those positions. And for some reason, Edwards at the time was sticking with a back three, even though we had no centre backs fit. And now you look at it, and we probably most Luton fans would probably like to see us move away from that back three. And now we've got so many centre backs that it's probably the only way we can get our best players into the side in defence. But at the moment, I think it's just not working. I think when you've got Lonvik, he must be able to play right back. He looks like he can play right back. He's playing right wing back and he's a centre half. So surely just drop him back and shift everyone across slightly. So you've got sort of Naismith in that left back position. It seems like an easy fix to me, and it gives Ali so much more freedom and lets sort of players like Clark, obviously Ali that I mentioned, just gives them the opportunity to push forward.
Yeah, for me in this league, and I don't want to get as Gary Sweet would say, all Billy Big Bollocks, our players are more than good enough in a back four to dominate a game. For me, I don't have a single question mark over that. If you have a midfield of Jordan Clark, George Saville, and Shandon Baptiste, you'd expect them to dominate any midfield in any sort of game, even against the Cardiff. But like you say, Lonvik, it's just bizarre that he's playing right wing back. Yes, he's right footed, but he has always looked more comfortable deeper. So why he's persistently being put further forward is bizarre. You wouldn't see Ruben Diaz play right wing back for Man City, who's a significantly better player on the ball. So why in the world would we try it with Lonvik? I don't know. Look, obviously Bloomfield sees his players week in, week out. I can't sit here and say I know better than him. But from what I see watching them, I don't see enough good performances to say, yes, this 3 or 5 at the back is working perfectly. This is the formation. This season, we've probably deserved to win, let's say debatably Wimbledon, because despite the lack of chances, they offered absolutely nothing. And then our second game, which was Peterborough, we deserved to win that. Bradford, absolutely not. And then you got Wigan. For me, that's a 50-50. I think Wigan, if you looked at it in the highlights, probably the better chances. But again, we probably dominated that game. And then obviously Cardiff, for me, you could probably say draws are fair, but overall, not good enough for the team we've got.
And when you look at the players we've got to come back into the side, who are the players that are back in training as well, so the likes of Ted and Mengi and Dave Chong and Walters will be back soon, you'd imagine. If you look at those players, you think, how are we going to put all of these players that Bloomfield wants to use into this back three system, which isn't working as it is? And I think, particularly with someone like Chong, who, whilst we've had criticism for in the past, you'd imagine at this level he'd be very, very effective. But is he going to be shoehorned in at a wing back position just to accommodate other defenders in the side, or are we actually going to shift to a system that he can actually get the best out of him in an attacking role?
If he plays Tahith Chong left wing back, as we've seen before, I think you'll quite quickly realise he is not a left wing back. I do see the counter argument from people that we don't have an abundance of wingers, which is a completely fair and valid argument at the moment, which is as to why we're not playing that 4. But when you get these players back, there is absolutely no reason to not play a 4. Then the other question mark is, well, we've got about 74 strikers up top. How can you only play with one striker? These are not issues for fans to deal with. These are issues for the board, the likes of Bloomfield to go, okay. Because he consistently said, I don't like a big squad. So why he's let the squad get this big is confusing me even more. Especially when you've got to consider, obviously, Adebayor's out until at least the end of January next year. So that's not really one to worry about. But you've got Yates, Woodrow, Nordas, Wells, probably Jacob Brown in there as well. That's a lot of strikers, even if you're playing 2 up front. So there needs to be a lot of movement for me, a lot of movement for this squad.
Yeah, when you look at the size of the squad we've got, and if you include sort of young players like Zach Nelson and Jake Richards in that, we probably have about 30, 32 players on the registered, whether or not they're fit. There's a question mark over the fitness of a few of those. But when you've got that many players in a squad, how can you find your best system how can you even train with that many players in a squad? What are you doing in training? Because say, for example, we weren't to move anybody on and they all miraculously got fit at the same time, which again, I say miraculously because I mean, no club that is likely to have every single player fit at the same time. But when you have, I mean, even if you had sort of 28 players available, how would you train effectively with a starting 11 and then you've got another 11 and then you've got a load of players that are just running around not involved at all?
The squad is way too big. Obviously, I think officially we have 22 registered players, which is the limit. But obviously, that's just counting a lot of under 21s. So the squad, I'd say, it's way too big for this level. It's way too big. You get 11, obviously, starting players and 7 subs. So you've got a squad of 18 every week. Obviously, one of those is automatically a goalkeeper as well. So there's going to be, like you say, there's going to be an 11 subs, and you probably have another 11, another set of subs. That's too many, way too many. So we need to cut this squad down. I think there's a lot of players that have just disappeared. Fane, for example, was always starting a lot, and now he's nowhere to be seen. Didn't even get brought on the other day. So not sure what's going on there. Woodrow again. Obviously, Bloomfield come out and said that was just selection. He's not going anywhere as it stands. So yeah, a lot of squad issues to sort out, especially people like players like Nakamba as well. Mengi, is he going to want to stay when he didn't want to stay in the Championship? Dave Chong, is he going to want to stay? There's a lot to deal with. Well, in less than a week as well.
Yeah, it's a very, very short time until the window closes, and whether or not we see players go out the door is at the moment going to be quite a surprise with who we see go. Um, just quickly going back to the game we saw, and I know it's been a little while now since we actually mentioned it, but we had sort of a midfield with Walsh and Saville initially, and Walsh obviously had a real disaster for him, and I'm sure he'd be the first to admit he struggled in that game. But then you saw the changes come, and Baptiste and Nelson came on in midfield, and I thought we looked way better with those two on. Nelson in particular was for me maybe our most impressive player in the game, which is not bar maybe Keeley, but even he had sort of some interesting decisions that he made, including coming charging out of the box and just taking out a player, which I guess we could see coming based on what we've seen from him so far. Luckily, no one was injured in that, and he only got a yellow card. But yeah, Nelson came on and for me looked pretty competent in midfield. He was moving the ball quickly. He was beating a player and then moving the ball, and it was the first time we'd actually seen that all game.
Yeah, I think that's something that both Nelson and Baptiste offer in abundance. Their ability to just skip by a man and play these killer passes. And obviously, believe has come out and said, I'm not too sure what Nelson's best position is. And I think even as fans, we can agree with him on that. He actually really impressed me when he played as an 8 against Coventry, but obviously his natural position is usually a 10. Obviously, we've seen him on the left, we've seen him on the right in the Championship. So it's hard to actually nail down where is best for him. For me, I still think it's a number 10. I think his ability to just beat a man, dribble around, choose his pass well, very good. And as you say, Baptiste, I think he did well. He got stuck in. Well, he got stuck in, won the foul, and then Kadua played a dodgy pass for Naismith to then concede. But he got stuck in, and his passing is just exquisite. The amount of times against Peterborough, he'd just switch it and keep the play flowing. How he's not starting is beyond me. Obviously, for me, Saville, I wasn't a massive fan of, but in the most recent games, he's really impressed me. I think he's got stuck in well, broke up the game, but his passing's been good as well. He's shown purpose, and he brings that left-footed balance in the middle. So I wouldn't be surprised to see a lot of change next week. Will it be a change in shift system? that we will wait and see. I don't think it will be, given what he said, but we'll see and find out. Hopefully, there will be a few changes.
Yeah, we're going to go for a quick break now, but when we get back, we'll be looking to the game against Burton and also discussing any other changes we might see, incomings and outgoings, in the remaining few days of the transfer window. Welcome back to Oak Road Hatter. You're still joined by Finley Cannon and Lewis Jones. Now we're looking ahead to the trip to Burton on Saturday, and it's an exciting step down from our big away days in the Premier League and the Championship. And it's Burton Albion away, who obviously, I say no disrespect to Burton, but what I've just said is not overly respectful. But when you look at what we've done on the pitch, it's not miles away from what they've been doing this season. So yeah, we can't put ourselves up too much there. And it's a Burton side that's sit 16th, who I think most would probably not expect to be doing too much in terms of the top half of the table this season. They seem to have such regular changes in their squad. Like they have a big turnover of players over the last couple of seasons, both times, that you look at their squad and there's actually not that much you can say in terms of what you can expect from the players they've got. But there's a couple of players that be familiar to Luton fans. They've obviously got Harry Isted in goal, who I think for a little while people thought, oh, maybe he might make it at Luton, but then yeah, he just seems to have fallen further down the league as the last few seasons have gone on, which is pretty disappointing to be honest. But he's 28 now, which I'm surprised about. They've also got a few players in defence. That Toby Sibbick, who's sort of been around in the EFL and the Scottish League for the last few seasons. I think he's quite a solid defender for the level. And then sort of Anthony Ford was a player who was at Wrexham for a few years and Oxford United before that. Outside of that, they've not got loads that sort of you know about or I know about anyway. And they've had a pretty slow start to the season with just one win from their opening games.
Yeah, I think you said they're 16th. I think they would be very happy to finish there coming into the season. I feel like every time I look at Burton, they have a completely new manager every season. So had a little look this time around. It was Gary Bowyer. So I think we can kind of guess what to expect. They're not going to be naive and try and play out from the back, come out and attack us. I think we can kind of guess they're going to be sitting in, looking to remain solid. I think they generally play a five at the back, which up against ours, which was what it will likely be, will be interesting. But as you say, they're quite well renowned for not having an abundance of money. Obviously, I think there's a crazy someone that's playing the championship not all too long ago, which is massively impressive. But I think as a side like us looking to get promotion this season, the first time of asking, these are the exact sort of games you have to win, especially with the poor form going into the international break as well. Obviously, I know we played Barnet following that, but that's the Johnson's paint. I don't know what it's called these days. It changes every season as well. But yeah, it's going to be. I can see it being a tight game. I think a 1-0 I wouldn't be surprised by at all, given our lack of clinical finishing, lack of chance creation, but also that solidity at the back. It'll be a tight game, I see.
Yeah, with Gary Bowyer in charge, you'd expect them to be very tough to break down. They'll be hard working, the players will be very fit off the ball, and they'll be tracking back and getting in front of us. And it'll be up to Luton, you'd expect, to try and break them down and show a bit of creativity, which is something we've lacked this season a lot. And you'd like to see maybe there'll be a couple of changes to the side and hopefully some players come in who will look to break them down more effectively than what we've seen at times this season, with probably the only time where we've played well for an extended period being that second half against Peterborough a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I can definitely see them being difficult to break down. As I say, Gary Bowyer is not going to be naive to go out and say, yeah, we're going to go out and attack this Luton team, because he knows, even despite our lack of threat recently, we should put them to the sword if that's what happens. As you say, I think there'll be a lot of changes. You look at Kadua probably starting. Bramall, you definitely expect to start. But how that's going to line up, I don't know, because realistically, that means that Ali has to go up front, and that means one of Wells or Nordos has to drop. Does Yates remain on the bench? There again, there's more question marks than answers. So there will be changes, most definitely. Obviously, I think Mengi and Chong are both back in training now properly as well. So are they going to be in contention? Will they come back in straight away? Probably not. But if you can get someone like Chong on the bench, away at Burton is a game where he will definitely come in handy. So I think there's a lot to be excited about in this game. Obviously, with Luton this season, you've got to be very wary when you say that. But a game that we should be looking forward to rather than fearing.
I think one of the other issues we've got this season is a lot of fans of other clubs and probably players as well will be looking at Luton going, "Oh, we could really get something here against a side that were in the Premier League a couple of years ago and cause a bit of an upset." And then you can just know that fans will be straight on us, um, sort of saving anything we say and coming back at us to say, "Oh, you thought you'd sort of be much better this season than you are," or to not to those words exactly. And I think we need to be careful not to, as Sweet ironically said a few years ago, not be Billy big bollocks about ourselves. And we actually have to be a bit more humble than maybe we have been this season, where we're expecting to go into games and really dominate, because we haven't dominated any games really, not effectively. And I think Burton is somewhere that you could go and really quite easily slip up because they are so well drilled and hard working.
Yeah, I remember the League One season we got promoted. I went to the game, and I believe we lost 1-0. I can't. It's either that or 1-1. And that day, I think if we won, we would have been promoted officially. So if that says that, if anyone thinks it's an easy place to go, it's certainly not, because we were absolutely flying that season, and this season has certainly been far from that. As I said, I expect it to be a very tight game. I think Gary Bow is going to set them up defensive. He's going to set them up solid. It's up to us to break them down. And I feel this would be a perfect game to switch the shape. I really do. Get used to it. Get these players bombing on. Get them used to where they're going to play. Get them used to these partnerships. Learn to break the teams down that are going to do that, because it's going to happen a lot this season where teams try and sit in, as they've done in a lot of games so far. But yeah, Burton is certainly no easy place to go, and you can't just go there expecting to get 3 points, because you'll get shown up.
Let's talk a bit more about the transfer window. Obviously, we've got little time left. At time of recording, there's 4 days left in the window. Do you expect anyone to come in through the door in that time?
For me, I think there has to be. I really do. I think we desperately need a left wing back. If we are going to stick with this shape, we have to get a left wing back in the door, because Bramall, as I said, he seems steady, which is fine. But when you're a team aiming to get promotion, possibly even win the league, you need someone that's going to stand out every week. Someone like Alfie Doughty in previous years in the Championship, where they are the best in their position. We have the money. Obviously, rumours that we had money from Justin as well. Don't know how true that is, but that would be money to spend. And for me, I think, as I say, wing backs are key positions. Right wing back is fine when Izzy Jones is back. For now, with Walters being injured and having a bit of a sketchy injury record as well since joining us, which is no surprise. We seem okay there. And I think the big thing for me is getting players out. I think we definitely need a few players in that left wing back being a main spot, and some wingers, but wingers only if we go to this forward back shape.
And when you look at the players we have in the squad that just aren't available at the moment, you sort of think, oh, we do have some wingers in the squad in terms of Chong, Brown, Jones can play there as well if we play a four at the back. You could do her as well. So maybe you'd suggest that doesn't need to be priority. Obviously, with Ali, who will most likely play off that left-hand side as well. And I think left wing back or left back has really been a problem since Alfie left, obviously, in the window. And it doesn't seem like a position we're urgently trying to fill. The few links we've had have been with sort of players in other areas of the pitch. And I think that left back position has to be priority, as you mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think it's actually been an issue for a couple of years now. I think you even look back to last year when Alfie got injured, it was mix and match. Sometimes Mario would go out there, he never really had a great game at left wing back. Then it was, I can't remember, we'll try Ali there. Came on against Stoke, and to be fair to him, he was absolutely incredible, and I think that's why his position has kind of stuck. But Johnson, it doesn't seem to be viewed as a left wing back. Obviously, he frequently plays left centre half. For us, whether there's a reason behind it, I don't know, because for the England setup, he plays left back. So, contrasting thoughts once again from different managers. But yeah, left wing back's been an issue for me for a couple of years, and for some reason, it just absolutely baffles me. We did not have a replacement lined up. Surely the board, the recruitment team, the manager cannot be naive enough to think, yeah, we're going to keep Alfie Doughty in League One. It's absolutely never going to happen. By all accounts, he's been flying at Millwall until he got injured. You can take the man out of Luton, but you cannot take the Luton out of the man. So to think we're going to keep him is ridiculous. Not having a replacement lined up is even worse, because having a replacement in Cohen Bramall, who, let's be fair, is bang average for League One by all accounts, and isn't even fit, is ridiculous. Obviously, we were linked to Jamal Lewis earlier in the window. That seemed to have gone dead very early on. But yeah, that's the one position. Aside of that, I don't think there's too much to be looking at. If there's someone that can massively come in and improve the squad, absolutely, go for it. But as of need, for me, it's only left wing back or left back.
Yeah, just before we finish, we're going to do some quick predictions for the game on Saturday. And I'm going to start with you for your first prediction of the season.
Jesus, take me back now. These never went well for me, so I've got to be careful here. I do think that reaction at the end of the game would have shocked the players. And it's one of them where it can go 50-50. So I'm going to go for 2-0. I think it will wake them up. I think it'll wake up Bloomfield. I think it will kind of give everyone that shock that this has not been good enough, and they finally click into gear.
I was also going to go for 2-0, but because I don't want to match up exactly what you said, I'm going to go out on a limb and say we are going to concede a goal, but I think we'll be 2-0 up when that happens, and we'll see out the game quite easily. So, and I say that through gritted teeth because now I've said it, it probably won't be the case. But yeah, I'm going to go for 2-1 Luton, and I also think we will hopefully see a reaction from the full-time reaction from the fans, which was pretty negative, and it was quite clear that Luton fans are really not happy with what we're seeing on the pitch now.
No, I have got to include myself in that. I certainly wasn't happy at the time for a side that, as I say, was recent in the Premier League, and a side that was in the Championship last year, to have played 3 games and lost 2, albeit Bradford, to be fair to them, are absolutely flying. And at the time of recording, they're currently beating Stoke 3-0 at Stoke, who are top of the Championship. Maybe we can slightly forgive that loss, but yeah, to have lost 2 games out of 5, I don't think anyone would have expected that.
Yeah, we'd love to know your score predictions, any of your thoughts from today's episode. So let us know in the comments if you're listening on YouTube or Spotify or on social media at Oak Road Hatter, and let us know any of your thoughts on anything we've discussed today. But from myself and from Lewis, thank you very much for listening.